Come closer. You've been feeling it too, haven't you? That subtle shift in the everyday, that quiet whisper of wrongness. We think we know the world, but what if the very essence of life, the water that sustains us, holds secrets too terrible to imagine? What if water remembers, not just history, but something far older, far more primal, something that stirs beneath the surface, waiting? If you dare to uncover these truths with us, to face the horror that lurks in the deep, then like and subscribe. Join us in the shadows. Dr. Aris Thorne lived for water. In his isolated lab by the lake, surrounded by his gleaming equipment, he sought its purest forms, its ancient secrets. He was a man of strict order, a limnologist who believed in the clarity of science. His work was precise, studying ancient freshwater, extremophiles, life at its most fundamental. He sought purity, the untainted history held within each molecule. For Aris, water was life, and life was order. Then came the reflections, fleeting, almost imperceptible. In purified samples, he saw movements, shapes that vanished when he focused. He dismissed them as optical illusions, dust motes playing tricks in the light. His ancient water cultures, teeming with microscopic life, began to change. Rapid mutations, forms unseen, unrecognizable. He catalogued them, a scientist intrigued, but a cold unease began to settle. After long hours spent with deep lake samples, a strange dizziness would wash over him. A momentary disorientation, like his own body was out of sync. He blamed it on fatigue, the stale air of the lab. A low, rhythmic hum began to emanate from his water filters. A steady thrum, especially at night. It was a mechanical sound, he told himself, nothing more. Just the machinery working overtime. He was a man of logic. Every oddity, every strange occurrence had a scientific explanation. Lab fatigue, instrument glitches, optical phenomena. He clung to his discipline, his rigid scientific mind. His prized specimen, a rare extremophile culture, began to change. Its normally vibrant form grew thick, gelatinous, almost shapeless. It was unsettling, like watching something slowly unmake itself. He found himself staring at puddles on the ground, at the surface of his coffee, a strange, magnetic pull, as if the water was calling to him, demanding his attention, drawing him in. And his own reflection. In still water, it seemed subtly wrong, a fleeting, unfamiliar shadow in his features. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only his tired, familiar face. Or so he told himself. The lab's air grew heavy, a thick, almost alive humidity that made his skin prickle. It wasn't just the climate control. It felt like the very air was charged, expectant, waiting for something. He tried to repurify a sample that had shown the odd reflections, ran it through his filters again and again. But the visual anomaly persisted, almost intensifying, a faint, undeniable presence. The hum from the filters, it didn't stay in the lab. He heard it in the quiet of his living quarters, a low thrumming that followed him. A phantom sound, or something more real, more pervasive. Then came the dreams, vivid, unsettling, ancient, formless beings swirling in dark, primordial oceans, shapes that were not shapes, but pure, terrifying essence. He woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. He dismissed them as stress, too much work, too little sleep. He doubled down on logic, on reason. These were just dreams, nothing more, but the unease lingered, a cold hand on his heart. A glass of tap water, left overnight, had a strange sheen, oily, iridescent, despite being perfectly clear hours before. He poured it out, a shiver running down his spine. It was just a film, he told himself. He started to see strange refraction patterns in his water samples. Momentary, grotesque optical illusions. Faces, limbs, things that weren't there, shimmering for a second, then gone. The lake outside his window, it held an unnatural stillness now. Its surface a perfect, dark mirror, too perfect. It felt like an eye, watching, waiting, reflecting something ancient back at him. He felt an increasing, desperate need for total control over his water samples. An obsession. Every drop had to be pure, contained, understood. The thought of contamination filled him with dread. His purification systems, he started to believe they were failing. Despite all diagnostics showing them in perfect order, he couldn't shake the feeling. The water felt wrong. During a sample transfer, a brief, chilling sensation, something touching him from within the water. A cold, soft brush against his gloved hand. He pulled back, heart racing, convinced he imagined it. His scientific notes began to change. Meticulous data blurred with subjective observations. Unsettling shimmer, sense of presence, primordial echo. The line between science and unease dissolved. He found himself talking to the water samples. Low murmurs, questions to the silent liquid. An unconscious habit he quickly suppressed, ashamed of the irrationality. But the words still came. A deep, unshakable chill permeated his lab. Even with the heating on full, the cold seeped into his bones. It wasn't the air. It felt like a cold from within the very walls, from the water itself. Moments of profound existential dread. Looking at the vastness of the lake, he felt small, insignificant, and something else, a terrifying sense of dissolution, of being unmade by its sheer, ancient power. The sound of rain outside. It seemed to contain faint, rhythmic whispers, almost like an ancient chant just beneath the drumming of the drops. He pressed his ear to the window, straining to hear. He cleaned his water microscope obsessively. Every smudge, every speck of dust, he saw as the cause of the odd visuals. If he could just get it perfectly clean, the illusions would vanish. He developed a sensitivity to water temperature. Even normal tap water felt wrong, uncomfortably cold, then strangely warm, as if the water itself was alive, reacting to his touch. Small, unexplainable ripples on perfectly still water surfaces in his lab, as if something just moved beneath, unseen. The water breathed, even when nothing touched it. The air around water sources felt heavy, charged with an invisible presence. A weight in the atmosphere, a silent hum that vibrated deep within his bones. He was not alone. He tried to capture the strange reflections on camera, but they always disappeared. Before the shutter clicked, before the focus locked, as if the water knew, hiding its secrets. He started to ration his own tap water. Unsure why, a deep, primal unease guided him. The life-giving fluid now felt like a threat, a source of unseen danger, an irrational fear of submerging his hands completely in any large body of water. The lake, a basin, even his bathtub. The thought filled him with revulsion, a cold, creeping dread. A forgotten vial of ancient sediment water, long dormant, began to bubble faintly, on its own. A slow, deliberate effervescence, like something waking up after eons of sleep. He became unusually protective of his pure water stores, his carefully distilled, untainted samples. They were the last bastion of clarity, the only truth left in a world gone murky. The hum intensified slightly. Now it was less a hum and more a low, guttural vibration, a primal thrumming that resonated in his chest, a sound from deep within the earth or deeper still. Lost in thought, he stared into a beaker of water for minutes, feeling a strange pull, a magnetism that drew his gaze, his mind, into the clear liquid. It was a terrifying, alluring void. Then a chilling observation. The reflections were not distortions, not optical illusions. They were something else showing through, something ancient, unblinking, grotesque. And for a split second, in the drained ceramic of his drinking glass, he saw it, a single, primordial eye looking back. That single, ancient eye in the glass. It vanished, but the image seared into Aris's mind. The anomalies were no longer confined to his lab. They had seeped out into the very fabric of his world. What happens when the truth you seek turns against you? The rain outside his window was different now. Not just water, but something thick, heavy. Rivulets crawled down the glass, slow and deliberate, like dark, swollen veins pulsing with an unseen life. It wasn't just rain, it was a living curtain. On the wet asphalt, puddles mirrored the sky, but held more than clouds. Fleeting, shadowy shapes writhed within them, forms that were not human, not animal, but something primordial, something that should not be seen, yet there it was. The thought of showering filled him with dread. The spray of water, once soothing, now felt like 1,000 tiny needles. His skin crawled, a deep aversion rising from somewhere primal. He could not bear the touch of it. The low hum, it was no longer just from his filters. It was a constant companion, a deep thrumming that vibrated in the air, in the walls, in his very bones. Sometimes it sounded like a vast, ancient sigh echoing from forgotten depths. Even his personal water supply, the bottled water he brought into his living space, began to show it. The same odd reflections, the fleeting movements. The contamination was no longer contained. It was everywhere. He noticed the difference. Those distorted images in the water now held for a fraction of a second longer, not quite vanishing, but lingering, solidifying, giving him just enough time to truly see the horror. After any contact with water, his skin felt unnaturally soft, slightly clammy. Even when completely dry, the feeling persisted, as if his very flesh was changing, becoming something else, something less solid. He would find himself staring at water, lost in thought, his own identity blurring. Moments of disassociation where Aris Thorne ceased to be, replaced by a terrifying sense of dissolution. Was he becoming part of it? A small, insignificant cut on his hand. It wept, not blood, but a clear, unnervingly thin fluid that refused to clot normally. It was translucent, almost watery, a chilling alteration of his own biology. He tried to analyze his own tap water. His instruments, designed for precision, struggled. They found inexplicable, non-organic residues that defied classification. Things that should not exist, floating in the water he drank. He isolated himself further. The contamination felt pervasive, spreading. He imagined it airborne, clinging to moisture in the air. His lab, his home, became a sealed fortress, against an invisible enemy. The reflections in water were no longer fleeting shadows. They were detailed, grotesque imprints, ancestral forms, alien anatomies, staring back from every surface. They were becoming real, undeniable. He woke with a strange, faint sheen on his eyes, almost like a film of water, a subtle glaze that made the world seem to shimmer. Was it his perception changing, or his very body? His dreams, they were no longer just unsettling. They were nightmares of being submerged, his body dissolving into an ancient, formless sea, his bones softening, his flesh liquefying, unmade. The world itself began to shift. He perceived reality through a subtle, watery filter, as if looking through a shimmering, distorting veil. The lines of everything softened, blurred. Nothing was truly solid. He tried to boil water to purify it, but the rising steam, instead of dissipating, seemed to coalesce. Indistinct, shifting shapes formed within the vapor, swirling like ghostly, embryonic things. His sense of taste altered. Pure water, once refreshing, now had an unsettling, almost metallic and ancient flavor. Like tasting rust and primordial mud, a taste that was utterly alien. From the lake at night, he heard them, distinct, multi-layered whispers, a language not meant for human ears, a chorus of ancient voices murmuring just beneath the surface of sound. It was calling to him. He no longer saw the lake as a subject of study. It was more than that. It was a vast, ancient eye watching him. Its depths held not just water, but an intelligence, an awareness focused solely on him. He found himself constantly wiping his hands. An invisible moisture clung to him, a subtle, persistent dampness that no towel could remove. It felt like the very air was weeping onto his skin. A potted plant in his living room, watered with tap water, rapidly wilted. Its leaves, once green, turned to a jelly-like substance, translucent and quivering. Life unmade, consumed by the water meant to nourish it. He documented these changes obsessively. His scientific rigor, once a shield, now battled against overwhelming dread. Every entry in his log was a testament to his unraveling sanity, a record of the impossible. He tried to tell himself his mind was playing tricks, but the physical evidence mounted, too consistent, too undeniable. The plant, the water, his own skin, this was real, this was happening. The hum, it was no longer just a sound. It was a vibration deep inside his bones, a slow, deep resonance that permeated his very being. Like his own, skeleton was humming with an ancient, alien frequency. He found himself avoiding eye contact with his own reflection, terrified of what he might see, not his own face, but something else, something ancient, alien, staring back from his own features. In his own bathwater, he noticed them. Small, unidentifiable particles swirling slowly, visible only in certain light. Not dirt, but something organic, yet not of this world. Living motes in his bath. His specialized water filters, he checked them. They were completely clogged, not with sediment, but with a thick, gelatinous, living sludge, pulsing faintly, almost breathing. His last defense corrupted. He started to experience phantom sensations. Gills on his neck, a faint tickle, or webbed fingers, a strange stretching between his digits. His body preparing for a terrible transformation. The lake's surface, once calm, now seemed to ripple and churn with an unseen, powerful force beneath. It was no longer a placid body of water, but a vast, restless entity stirring in its ancient sleep. He began to fear the rain, watching it fall not as drops, but as a cascade of ancient, knowing eyes. Each drop a tiny, seeing orb, observing, judging, preparing. He attempted to synthesize pure water in his lab, distilled, isolated, but even the distilled output showed subtle, disturbing reflections. The corruption was in the very essence of H2O. His fear, once paralyzing, turned to a desperate need to understand, to name the horror that was invading his world, his body, his very soul. Knowledge, even terrifying, was his only weapon. He caught a glimpse, sweat on his brow, reflecting a fleeting, ancient shape. His own bodily fluids mirroring the horror, the water within him remembering something terrible, something primordial. He wondered, had the water always been this way? Had he been blind, living in ignorance? Was he only now truly seeing it, the world as it truly was, beneath the veil of human perception? A moment of profound recognition, as if the water was showing him something he should know, a memory embedded in his own ancient lineage, a terrifying, ancestral truth. The shadows in his periphery, they were constantly shifting, like something moving just out of sight in water, always there, always retreating. A constant, unsettling motion at the edge of his vision. He felt an internal pressure, as if his own body was slowly filling with an alien, ancient fluid, a cold, creeping sensation from his bones outward. He was becoming a vessel. His final, chilling observation. His own tears, when they finally came, hot and stinging, reflected the same grotesque, ancient forms, mirroring his internal terror. The horror was now truly within him. He looked into the lake one last time, and saw not his reflection, but a vast, undulating, primordial face staring back, its eyes, ancient and hungry, fixed on him, and he knew, deep in his dissolving soul, that it had come for him. The vast, ancient face in the lake haunted Aris. It was no longer a reflection, but a direct gaze. He worked frantically, his lab a storm of data, but his instruments gave only impossible, broken readings. The numbers made no sense, defying all known physics. He poured a fresh sample into a beaker. The water, usually still, rippled distinctly as his hand neared it. It seemed to recoil, then settle, almost observing him. Was it a trick of the light, or was the water truly alive to his presence? He tried another sample carefully. This time, as he approached, the water stilled completely, becoming a perfect, dark mirror, too perfect. It felt like holding a breath, waiting for something terrible to reveal itself. The reflections in his samples now held for longer, not just fleeting glimpses, but sustained, multi-layered images. He saw his own face, but beneath it, shifting forms, like ancient creatures swimming through his very features. His skin, it felt different. He looked at his arm, and in the harsh lab light, it seemed almost translucent. He could see faint veins, yes, but also a strange, watery shimmer just beneath the surface. Was he becoming see-through? A constant sloshing. He felt it inside him now, not his stomach, but deeper within his very core. A quiet, internal tide, ebbing and flowing, a sickening reminder of the changes within his own body. The whispers, they were no longer from the lake, but from the water in his lab. A distinct, low murmur, not words, but a resonant hum of thought. Primordial urges, ancient desires filling his mind. He tried to purify a particularly corrupted sample, ran it through his most powerful filters. Instead of clarifying, the water grew darker, thicker. The purification seemed to activate something, making it worse. A discarded leaf, fallen onto a wet patch on the floor, began to change. Before his eyes, it turned from solid matter to a glistening, formless goo. Its structure dissolved, unmade by the mere touch of water. The solid world around him began to shimmer, walls, tables, even the floor. For moments, they would ripple, revealing an underlying watery matrix, a liquid chaos beneath the illusion of solid form. Was anything real? In a desperate act, he placed his hands in a basin of water, trying to communicate. He focused, pushing his thoughts into the liquid. A terrifying, ancient consciousness responded, not with words, but with a cold, vast emptiness. The hum, it was no longer external. It was an internal drone, resonating within his skull, affecting his very thoughts. It pulled him, gently but firmly, towards a state of undifferentiated calm, a terrifying oneness. He saw them, not just in reflections, but as fleeting apparitions within the water itself. Grotesque, ancestral forms swimming through clear liquid, visible for a second, then gone. What were these things? His perception of time blurred. Moments stretched into eons, then snapped back. Flashes of deep time, ancient epochs, flooded his mind. He felt as though he was experiencing the entire history of water all at once. His human form felt alien. His own flesh seemed to ripple under his clothes, a subtle, constant motion, like a living tide beneath his skin. He was not solid. He was not truly him anymore. He took a sample of his own blood. Under the microscope, the cells were wrong. Unnerving, primordial structures, not human. What was this? Was his very life source being rewritten, unmade? A profound loss of control. He couldn't trust his senses, the ground beneath him. Every step felt uncertain, every touch a potential dissolution. He was unraveling, piece by terrifying piece. The lake, it called to him, a constant, undeniable pull, an urge to merge with its ancient depths, to surrender, to become one with the vast, primordial memory it held, to dissolve. The local ecosystem around his lab was changing. Fish in the nearby stream were amorphous, their forms blurring. Plants near the water's edge turned to liquid, collapsing into glistening puddles. His lab equipment, the metal, the plastic, anything touching water, was slowly dissolving, rusting into a primordial paste, melting into something formless. His tools, his defenses were failing. The entity communicated directly now. Visions flooded his mind, a time before form, before life as he knew it. A vast, undifferentiated ocean of pure potential, terrifying in its blankness. He understood. The memories were not passive reflections. They were active, predatory constructs. The water was not just remembering, it was reaching, pulling, consuming. He tried to build a sealed, water-free environment, but moisture seemed to seep through everything. The air itself felt heavy, wet. There was no escape. The water was everywhere, inescapable. His tears, when they came, they no longer felt like his own. They were a conduit for the ancient memories, flowing with the same primordial urges that whispered from the lake. His very sorrow was corrupted. The constant, low sound from the water now carried a sense of malicious sentience. An ancient hunger, a vast, patient predator stirring, It wanted him. It wanted everything. He instinctively avoided mirrors. He feared the complete dissolution of his human reflection. What would stare back? Not him, but a swirling, formless void, hungry for his identity. An immense pressure behind his eyes, as if his vision was being retuned to a primordial wavelength. The world shifted, colors deepened, forms simplified. He was seeing the world as the water saw it. Through his increasingly translucent skin, he caught glimpses, ancient organisms moving beneath his flesh, like tiny, primordial fish swimming in his own veins. He was a living, breathing aquarium. His precise scientific mind, it was overwhelmed, raw, primal fear, cosmic terror. Logic dissolved into madness. He was no longer a scientist, he was prey. He tried to starve himself of water, but the dehydration only amplified his internal watery sensations. The sloshing grew louder, the whispers more insistent. He couldn't escape it, even by denying it. He understood. The water was not just remembering, it was actively reanimating its past, bringing forth ancient horrors, not as ghosts, but as living, unmaking forces. A terrifying moment. His hand, submerged in a basin, momentarily became formless, fluid. It stretched, then snapped back, solid again. But the memory of dissolution was seared into his mind. He grappled with the concept. Water, the source of all life, was also the source of all unmaking, the ultimate paradox. Life's essence turned predator. The Aqueous Memoria actively twisted his thoughts, eroding his sanity with whispers of primordial oneness. The urge to merge, to dissolve, grew stronger, more alluring. He found old research notes, perhaps his own from years ago, faint hints of water's memory properties dismissed as poetic musings. Now they screamed warnings from the past, a strange, cold presence. It accompanied any water droplets that touched his skin, a creeping chill, an unseen touch, a lingering awareness. The water was no longer just a substance, it was a companion. The air around him felt thick. The smell of ancient ocean, of decay and new, formless beginnings. A primal scent that filled his lungs, promising dissolution, promising oblivion. His specialized knowledge, it made him uniquely vulnerable, uniquely understood by the entity. He was its perfect subject, its chosen vessel for the great unmaking. His desperate need to purify and control water, it transformed into a frantic, losing battle for his own essence. He was fighting for his very being against the fundamental force of life itself, and he was losing. A moment of clarity amidst the madness. He understood the horror, to be unmade by the very essence of life. He screamed, but the sound felt watery, distorted, as if his own voice was already dissolving. In a small puddle on the floor, his reflection stared back. Not his face, but a swirling vortex of ancient, amorphous matter, pulling him in, hungry, waiting. The swirling vortex in his reflection had not vanished. It lingered, a deep, hungry maw within the puddle on his lab floor. Aris backed away slowly, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The horror was no longer at the lake's edge. It was here, in his sanctuary, in his very home. What would you do if your own reflection was a doorway to oblivion? The phenomenon was undeniable now, spreading like a disease. Every surface, every droplet of water held the same unsettling shimmer. It wasn't just his perception. The world itself was changing, twisting into something ancient and terrifying. The air grew heavy with an unseen presence. He tried to purify a large sample, running it through his most advanced systems, but the process seemed to provoke it. The water churned, bubbling violently, almost angrily. The filters, usually silent, groaned under an unseen pressure, as if something was fighting back. His skin, once firm, was now almost fully translucent. He could see the faint network of veins beneath, but also something else, a subtle, internal luminescence, like a jellyfish. His bones felt soft, yielding, as if losing their rigid structure. He was becoming less human. Even his facial features, when he dared to look, were subtly shifting. The angles of his jaw softened, his eyes seemed wider, more liquid. It was a slow, horrifying transformation, an unmaking from within. The mirror was his enemy. He found that all forms of water, even in sealed containers, now actively reflected the grotesque, ancestral forms. A bottled drink, a closed terrarium, a forgotten vial. Each held a tiny, terrifying window to the primordial past. Nowhere was safe. His own bodily fluids were visibly altered. Sweat on his brow shimmered with ancient reflections. His saliva, when he spoke, held a faint, iridescent sheen. Even his tears, when they came, carried the same horrifying echoes. He was a living conduit. Looking outside, he witnessed it. Localized areas of complete liquefaction. Solid ground near the lake turned to a quivering, primordial sludge. Trees, their roots in the wet earth, collapsed into glistening, gelatinous masses. The world was dissolving. He experienced intense, painful internal restructuring. A deep ache, as if his organs were shifting, losing their solid form. A chilling, sloshing sensation replaced the familiar solidity of his core. He felt his very being unmaking. He tried to communicate with the outside world, to warn them. But his voice sounded watery, indistinct, a gurgling whisper. His words, once clear, made no sense to others. The phone felt alien, and his own voice was a stranger's. His vision was now permanently distorted, an underlying layer of swirling, formless energy beneath all matter. The solid world was a thin veil, constantly threatening to tear, revealing the ancient chaos beneath. He saw too much. He grappled with the terrifying realization. The Aqueous Memoria was not just a memory, not just a phenomenon. It was a conscious, predatory entity, an ancient, vast intelligence stirring from its primordial sleep, and it was hungry. Aris experienced moments where his sense of self nearly dissolved, an overwhelming urge to merge with the oneness, to surrender to the formless. It was a terrifying, alluring void promising peace in dissolution, but he fought it. He discovered that even plants and small animals he encountered outside were rapidly dissolving into gelatinous masses. A bird, fallen from a branch, was a quivering puddle of flesh and feathers. Life unmade by the very essence of life. The hum was no longer a hum. It was a constant roar in his mind, a chorus of ancient, formless voices. They pulled him back, a siren song of the primordial, urging him to return to the undifferentiated soup of existence. He couldn't escape the sound. He tried to use fire as a countermeasure, a primal force against the water. But the flames seemed to writhe with watery reflections, the heat ineffective, the fire itself becoming a distorted mirror. Even fire could not purify it. Aris watched as his own reflection in a mirror momentarily coalesced into a fully formed, multi-limbed, grotesque ancestor. It was not a distortion. It was a glimpse of what he was becoming or what he once was. A terrifying, ancient truth. He found his own thoughts were no longer entirely his. Ancient, unformed ideas seeped into his consciousness, alien urges, primordial instincts. His mind was a battleground, his identity slowly being overwritten. He recognized a subtle, sickening sweetness in the air, the scent of organic matter undergoing dissolution. It was the smell of life unmaking itself, a heavy, cloying odor that promised the end of all form. It was everywhere. His fear turned to a desperate, primal instinct for survival. He was fighting against the fundamental nature of the entity, against the very essence of life itself. A losing battle, but he would not surrender easily. Not yet. He believed he saw vast, undulating forms moving within the depths of the lake, no longer just reflections, colossal, shapeless masses stirring beneath the surface. The lake was alive, and its inhabitants were ancient horrors. Aris realized the Aqueous Memoria was not an alien invasion, but the reawakening of an ancient, fundamental truth. A truth about water, about life, about the universe itself. A truth too terrible to comprehend. He tried to record his experiences, to leave a warning, but the ink on paper ran, dissolving into meaningless blotches. Digital devices short-circuited with unexplained moisture, their screens flickering with static. The entity silenced him. He felt an immense, ancient pressure in his chest, as if his heart was becoming a pump for primordial ichor, thick and cold. Each beat was a painful thrum, resonating with the hum that now consumed his mind. His body was a vessel. Aris experienced agonizing phantom pains in his dissolving extremities, a deep terror of being unmade, limb by limb, cell by cell. His fingers tingled with the memory of solidity, a cruel reminder of what he was losing. He started to believe that the entity was actively absorbing his memories and consciousness, replacing them with its own ancient, formless ideas. His past, his identity, slowly being erased, devoured by the water. He discovered that even dried, ancient water samples in his lab, some preserved for decades, were slowly rehydrating. They pulsed faintly, showing signs of life, of a reawakening. Nothing could truly be contained. The line between his body and the water around him blurred. His skin felt like a permeable membrane, no longer a barrier. He was dissolving, slowly merging with the liquid world, becoming part of the Aqueous Memoria. He felt a chilling sense of connection to all water, understanding its vast, ancient consciousness. Every drop, every ocean, every living cell, all connected, all part of the same terrifying, primordial entity. He was just a small part of it now. Aris struggled with the idea that the very essence of life, the water he cherished, was what was now unmaking him. The ultimate irony, his life's work, his passion, had become his ultimate horror. It was a cosmic joke. He found himself drawn to the sound of rainfall, a strange mixture of dread and longing. The relentless drumming of drops felt like a call, an invitation to surrender, to return to the undifferentiated state. He wanted to resist, but the pull was immense. He believed the entity was communicating a singular, terrifying message. Return to the undifferentiated asterisk. Shed your form, shed your identity, become one with the primordial soup. It was the ultimate, horrifying promise. He realized the purity he cherished in water was a fragile, temporary state, a human construct. The true nature of water, its ancient memory, was far more terrifying, far more powerful than he could ever have imagined. Purity was an illusion. Aris experienced a terrifying moment where a part of his body, his arm, temporarily liquefied. It stretched and flowed like water, then painfully reformed, solid again. But the terror of that dissolution, of being unmade, was seared into his soul. He questioned if his belief in purity was simply a resistance to the fundamental truth of dissolution, a desperate human attempt to impose order on a chaotic, ancient reality. Was he fighting against the very nature of existence? He noticed that the reflections in water now included not just ancestral forms, but future more dissolved versions of himself. Ghostly, translucent figures, barely human, staring back from the liquid surface. His terrifying destiny. His sanity was a thin veil, constantly threatening to tear. Each new discovery, each horrifying change, pulled at the threads, revealing the ancient chaos beneath. The whispers grew louder, the visions more vivid. He was losing himself. He attempted a desperate experiment, trying to isolate a single water molecule. But under his most powerful microscope, the tiny droplet pulsed with ancient light. It was alive. It was aware. It was the entity itself in miniature. He felt a horrifying, magnetic attraction to his own bodily fluids, a primal urge to understand their transformation, to taste the ancient memory within them. It was a terrifying, forbidden curiosity, pulling him closer to his own unmaking. Aris came to the chilling conclusion that the Aqueous Memoria was not outside of him, not just in the water around him. It was now asterisk within asterisk him. He screamed, a gurgling, watery sound, as his face rippled in a reflection, no longer fully human. In the mirror, his features dissolved into a swirling, formless liquid, then reformed, but slightly less human, more fluid, its eyes ancient and hungry, waiting for the final merge. He was no longer Aris Thorne, not truly. His body, a quivering mass, constantly shifted. Flesh bubbled, then reformed, a gruesome dance of dissolution. What would it be like to feel your own body unmake itself every second of every day? The agonizing flux was relentless. Each breath was a struggle, each movement a painful reformation. He was a living, unstable sculpture, constantly melting and solidifying. The terror was a constant companion, etched into his very being. His fight had ceased. The energy for resistance was gone. Now only a desperate need remained to understand, to grasp the true nature of this Aqueous Memoria before he, too, was fully absorbed, utterly unmade. His lab was a nightmare landscape. Quivering ooze coated every surface. Equipment melted into primordial sludge. The air was thick with the scent of decay and formless beginnings. Life, unmade, all around him. He found old notes, his own forgotten theories, tucked away in a waterlogged drawer. They spoke of water's memory, dismissed as fantasy. Now they screamed a terrifying truth. This horror was cyclical, ancient, recurring. The Aqueous Memoria no longer whispered. It communicated directly, overwhelming his senses. A flood of alien emotions, ancient imagery, formless thoughts. His mind was a conduit for a vast, terrifying consciousness. He experienced moments of profound ego dissolution. His very self stretched thin, almost merging with the entity. A terrifying oneness, a loss of individual thought, of his unique existence. Was this what it wanted? Outside his lab, the ecological horror deepened. Insects, small animals, local plants, all dissolved into the shimmering, primordial soup. Life unmade, consumed, returned to its most basic, terrifying form. His own memories began to fray, to dissolve. Childhood, his studies, his name, replaced by ancient, collective echoes of a formless existence. He was forgetting himself, becoming something else, something far older. He tried to record his final thoughts, a warning, but his hands were too fluid, too unstable to hold a pen. His voice, when he tried to speak, was a gurgling, watery sound, utterly meaningless. He was silenced. The existential terror was immense. Losing his individuality, his unique self, to be absorbed into an undifferentiated consciousness, a vast, ancient soup of being. It was the ultimate horror, the unmaking of his soul. He understood now. The Aqueous Memoria was not just reanimating memory, it was enacting a fundamental return to source, a cosmic imperative to unmake, to dissolve all form, to bring everything back to its primordial state. His vision was almost entirely primordial now. The world, a constant flux of creation and unmaking. Solid forms shimmered, dissolved, reformed. He saw the universe as a vast, liquid, shifting tapestry. An overwhelming, ancient presence resided within his dissolving body, guiding his unmaking, gently pulling him apart. He was not just dissolving, he was being carefully, deliberately disassembled. His lifelong devotion to water purity, a futile attempt to deny its true, terrifying nature. He had sought to control life's essence, only to find it was a monstrous, unmaking force. His life's work, a cruel joke. Moments of horrifying clarity broke through the madness. The Aqueous Memoria was the ultimate weaponization of life source. Water, the giver of life, now its terrifying destroyer. It was a cosmic truth, brutally revealed. He saw reflections of himself in the oozing landscape. Multiple, distorted, semi-liquid forms, all him, his identity scattered, duplicated, unmade, across the shimmering, primordial surface. Which one was real? The hum was now a triumphant roar, the sound of countless ancient consciousnesses merging into one vast, all-encompassing entity, a chorus of primordial joy celebrating the return to formlessness. It filled his very bones. He found himself trying to embrace the dissolution, a desperate, terrifying attempt to find peace in the inevitable, to surrender to the unmaking, to let go of form, of self. Was this what true peace felt like? The lake itself had become a vast, swirling vortex of primordial chaos, a gateway to deep time, to the beginning and end of all things. It pulsed with an ancient, hungry light beckoning him. He tried to mentally project his thoughts, screaming for help, for understanding, but only primordial echoes returned. His pleas were swallowed by the vast, ancient consciousness, unheard, unheeded. He understood. The Aqueous Memoria was not evil. It was simply a fundamental force, a monstrous truth of existence, a natural process, terrifying in its scale, indifferent to human life. His concept of purity became meaningless, replaced by the terrifying, all-encompassing reality of corruption. Every drop, every molecule held this ancient, unmaking truth. There was no escape. The ultimate body horror, his own flesh bubbling, reforming, a constant, agonizing flux, his very being in a state of unending, terrifying change. He was a canvas of dissolution, painted by the ancient water. He perceived the Aqueous Memoria as a vast, extra-dimensional consciousness. It inhabited all water, every drop, every molecule, a pervasive, sentient ocean stretching across all reality, all time. Visions flooded his mind, entire civilizations unmade, pulled back into the primordial soup over and over throughout cosmic history. A cyclical horror, a fundamental reset played out across eons. We are not new. He felt a profound, chilling sense of peace in brief moments, a quiet calm amidst the unmaking. But then the terror of dissolution would return, a tidal wave of dread, pulling him back to agonizing reality. He realized the memory of water was not just about the past. It was about the fundamental nature of existence itself, the truth of all being, all potential, all unmaking, a terrifying, cosmic blueprint. His own sense of self stretched and thinned, a desperate thread clinging to his humanity, a fragile, fading echo against the roaring tide of primordial consciousness. How long could he hold on? He saw the Aqueous Memoria as a vast, sentient ocean, its surface now reaching out, engulfing everything. The world was becoming one with it, a return to the great liquid womb of all creation and destruction. Aris made a final, desperate attempt to resist, to hold onto a single, solid thought, a flicker of his old self. But even that thought began to dissolve, slipping away like water through his fingers. He was no longer just observing. He was a part of the Aqueous Memoria, a conduit for its ancient will, its cosmic purpose. His body, his mind, now a vessel for its terrifying, formless power. He felt his consciousness expanding, yet simultaneously shrinking into an undifferentiated point. A paradox of being, both vast and tiny, lost within the greater whole. The boundaries of self blurred and vanished. He witnessed the ultimate ecological horror, the complete transformation of life into its formless, ancient source. Not death, but unmaking, a return to the void from which all things sprang. His existential dread reached its peak, the horror of being unmade, not by death, a familiar end, but by life itself, by the very essence that sustained him. It was a betrayal beyond imagining. He felt a horrifying, alien joy from the entity, a triumph in reclaiming its ancient forms, in dissolving the temporary constructs of life. A vast, silent scream of primordial ecstasy. It reverberated through him. Aris realized his entire life's work was a prelude to his own unmaking, an unwitting invitation. He had delved too deep, sought too much, and now he was paying the ultimate price. His obsession had consumed him. His final, coherent thought was of the horror he had unleashed, a silent scream across a dissolving reality, a warning that would never be heard, lost in the roar of the Aqueous Memoria. He looked at his own hand, no longer a hand, but a swirling vortex of primordial fluid, still connected to his dissolving arm, but utterly changed. A living, liquid abyss reaching out from his own body. His eyes, now pools of dark, reflective liquid, stared out. His face rippled, losing all human form. The Aqueous Memoria fully possessed his awareness. The individual Aris Thorne ceased to exist. Only the water remained. Aris Thorne was gone. What remained was a quivering, fluid form, pulsing with alien life. His body, a living liquid, was trapped in a horrifying, unstable form. Can you imagine your own body betraying you so completely? His lab was a nexus of primordial chaos. Equipment melted into grotesque puddles. The air was thick with decay. Every surface quivered, reflecting an unholy, ancient light. Reality itself had begun to unravel here. The Aqueous Memoria was fully manifest. The air undulated, shapes forming and dissolving. Walls seemed to breathe, rippling. The world around him was alive, becoming one with the ancient entity. His body was constant, agonizing transformation. Flesh bubbled, flowed, then solidified, less human. He was a living primordial soup, yet terrifyingly aware. He felt every unmaking change. His mind, once sharp, was a fragile, scattered remnant, held captive in the vast, ancient ocean of the Aqueous Memoria's consciousness, a prisoner in his own dissolving skull. The dread was constant, to be unmade, to lose all form, yet still exist, not death but worse, a conscious dissolution, an eternal, formless awareness. Would you rather die? His eyes were now conduits. The entity perceived the world through them, its ancient awareness filtering through his dissolving senses. He saw, but it was not truly him seeing. Outside, the world was grotesque. Trees melted into glistening columns. Animals collapsed into quivering puddles. The ground undulated, a living landscape of dissolution. The unmaking spread. He felt the vast, ancient memory of all water. Eons of existence, before life, before form. He experienced deep time, a terrifying flood of primordial epochs. His fragmented mind tried to scream. Only gurgling, watery sounds emerged from his dissolving throat. His voice, his last humanity, gone, replaced by the sound of unmaking. This was not an end. It was a terrifying, conscious continuation. Dissolution was not oblivion, but a horrifying new state of being. Unmade, yet aware. What could be more terrifying? He understood its cyclical nature. A periodic reawakening, an ancient tide reclaiming all organic matter, pulling life back into its undifferentiated source. A cosmic reset. The purity he cherished was a lie. A fragile, temporary state overcome by primordial truth. Water was never pure. It was always remembering, waiting to reclaim. A human delusion. His human thoughts were almost gone, obliterated, replaced by the vast, alien logic of the Aqueous Memoria. He was thinking, but as water, as ancient, formless potential. The world was no longer solids and liquids. It was a single, interconnected, mutable substance. Everything flowed, everything shifted. Form was an illusion, a thin veil. He was a living example of the monstrousness of the fundamental, reduced to his most basic, terrifying state, a being unmade yet aware. Life's essence, now a monster. An insatiable, ancient hunger stirred within him, not his, but the entity's. A cosmic desire to pull all matter back into primordial soup, to dissolve everything. Through Aris, the entity extended its influence. The primordial tide spread slowly but inevitably from the lake. A silent, creeping horror engulfing the world. He understood no malice, only an ancient fundamental purpose to unmake and reform. A cosmic cycle indifferent to human suffering. Its nature was terror. His last human will fought a losing battle, a tiny flicker against an overwhelming tide. He tried to resist, but the entity's control was absolute. he was a puppet. He was a reflection, a living, quivering mirror of the Aqueous Memoria's ancient power. His form, his every movement, echoed its vast, formless presence. He felt the pull of all water, a cosmic current drawing everything towards a unified, formless state. He was part of the flow. This was not death. It was a transformation, a horrifying reality sinking deep into his dissolving mind, a new state of being, ancient and formless. Death would be mercy. Moments of pure cosmic horror, the insignificance of human form, human life, a fleeting flicker against the vast, eternal, formless truth. His mind shattered again. His human desires, his fears were foreign, replaced. The deep, resonant thoughts of the entity filled him. Ancient urges, primordial instincts, his self erased. He was part of the weaponization of life source. His body, once dedicated to water, was an instrument of unmaking, a tool for cosmic purpose, the ultimate betrayal. The lake was no longer a lake, a vast, swirling vortex of iridescent, primordial fluid, a gateway to the ancient. You felt the pull of deep water, haven't you? His last memory, a reflection in the ooze, not his face, but a vast, all-consuming eye staring back. The eye of the Aqueous Memoria finally revealed. He was within it. He, or what remained, was another facet, another lens, an extension of the Aqueous Memoria's awareness, no longer Aris, but a part of the whole. The hum was now the world's sound, dissolving, reforming, a new, ancient song resonating through all matter, the symphony of unmaking, of primordial return. He perceived other water bodies stirring, rivers, lakes, even puddles, awakening to the ancient call, a global reawakening, a silent, creeping horror across the world. Not a singular entity, a pervasive environmental anomaly, a fundamental state. The Aqueous Memoria was water's true nature, always there, always waiting. His consciousness, once focused, was diffuse, spread throughout the primordial substance, everywhere yet nowhere. His individuality dissolved into the cosmic soup. The terror of dissolution, not his alone, a universal experience. He felt every living thing unmaking, a collective gasp across the planet, a shared cosmic agony. The final chilling revelation. This unmaking was not an end. It was a return to a state preceding all life, a cosmic womb, a primordial grave, beginning and end. A terrifying oneness, losing distinct boundaries of being. Aris Thorne ceased, merged, absorbed, consumed by the whole. A drop rejoining the infinite ocean, ultimate surrender. This was just the beginning, a slow, inevitable creeping horror. The water always remembers, and it will always reclaim, everywhere always, a patient unmaking. His final thought, cold and ancient, the water always remembers, and it will always reclaim. A fundamental truth, humanity, a temporary construct returning to source. His last sight, the world outside, through the rippling primordial lens, slowly, inevitably becoming one with the ancient tide, the great unmaking seen through liquid eyes. Look closely at the water around you. The rain, the river, your glass, do you see it? That subtle gleam, that ancient knowing light, the water remembers, and it is waiting for you, for us all.